What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. But before we get all into the topic for today, I would love it if you did a few things. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the share button, and the bell icon so you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. And then when you are finished watching this video, leave me a comment below and I'll get back to whatever it is that you had to say about the topic. For today's topic, I want to talk about the psychology of the Black Democratic Shill. And we're only about a week away or so from the election. So I really want to give you all this message before you all make your voting decision. So let's get into it. Gone are the days where foundational Black Americans just vote for the Democrats because their mama and their grandma and their daddy and their uncle and their auntie told them that they're supposed to do that. That the Democrats are going to be the individuals that are going to protect them from having all of these things happen to them, and for us to have a country that's just going to fall in the hands of racism and it's going to be the worst thing ever. But what is not gone are the days of having individuals who have given into the Democrats' agenda and have become willing puppets to their messages and to what they're trying to do. And what I really want to do is dive deep into the mentality of an individual who is on board with the Democratic agenda to the point where they feel the need to push it in your face 24/7. Because there's a certain set of behaviors that this individual loves to portray. And I think we need to talk about some of the generals before we get into the specifics. Now, I want to make this clear before we get into anything that's political, because some of you all who come and you watch this video do not know me. But what I want you all to understand politically is that I don't care who you vote for, and I don't care how you choose to vote. But in the case of myself, I'm always going to vote for things that are in the interest of Black people specifically. If those things are not being met, then I will not participate, and there will be other things that I will do to strategize and use my vote so that my voice is heard and my demands are met. And as foundational Black Americans, that is something that we historically have not done. We just hope that something would be there for us in the crossfires that could help somebody else adjacently. But we need things specifically for us because of how deeply our cultural and racial group has been oppressed. So I don't vote based off of parties. I vote based off of what is being done for Black people, or don't vote based off of that as well too. So that's not me telling you what my decision is. That's me telling you that my motivation whenever I vote, no matter what it is what is in it for Black people. And it's as simple as that. Now, when it comes to the mentality of the Democratic Shill, we really need to dive deep into some of the tactics that they use. But specifically, we need to talk about the nuance of the Black Democratic Shill and why it's so important to examine their behavior, because there are very specific things that they do on a regular basis. One of the things that you have to understand about the Democratic Shill, the Black Democratic Shill that is that a lot of their behavior is rooted in sheer cowardice. So a lot of the decisions that they make are based off of fear. So one of the strategies that you often will see from Democratic Shills is fear mongering. They will talk to other groups of people. Specifically, they will talk to other Black people. And instead of talking about the valuable things that their party or the party that they support does, what they will do is talk badly about the other side and what they are not doing in order to tell that person and deter them from voting for that party. And specifically, I'm talking about when they talk about Republicans. They'll talk about how the Republican Party is racist and they're going to bring us back to slavery. They're going to bring us back to Jim Crow and all this other stuff. So a lot of times they use this tactic of talking about the policies that the other side is choosing to implement that could harm Black people. And as a result, this is one of the reasons why you should join them in the things that they believe. The thing too is, even when different questions are presented to the Democratic Shield, such as, well, what are the Democrats going to do for black people specifically? And what type of tangible benefits are going to be given to foundational black Americans, especially when it comes to reparations and a bill that's going to protect us and things like that. Democratic shields tend to do one of two things. They either tend to revert back to what the Republican Party is not doing, or what they do is they start spewing a bunch of lift-all policies that have not helped black people, or they have been black adjacent. So in other words, they are programs that are either big old nothing burgers that seem like they could help black people, but have not really had a track record of having a large trend of helping black people, or it's a thing of it helps black people, but it helps everybody else. So that's more of a betterment for society, but not for black people specifically. And what we foundational black Americans who are pro-black and on the grassroots, who are B1, are asking for are specific tangibles for our people and for our lineage group because of the things that we have been through in America. So what a Democratic Shield likes to do is to say that the Democrats provide enough because they are giving you these black adjacent policies that will help black people along with everybody else. But what we're asking for are very things that are manageable and can be done. Even when we bring up the point about things such as reparations, they tend to try to deflect into other different things because they know that what they're presenting is not really of substance. So sometimes they deflect into things such as how they are not a one-issue voter. Or they like to deflect into things such as we can't do anything specifically for black people. The thing about reparations is that it's not one issue. First of all, us as foundational black Americans have asked for multiple things, such as tangibles that are going to protect us from being killed by race soldiers. We have asked for an ethno-aggregate society for us to be able to live and travel in different areas and be a group that is not integrated. We have asked for money that is going to help us to be able to create businesses specifically for us, not people of color. We have asked for reparations. We have asked for multiple things. So we're not one issue voters. Also, even if you were to just go off of reparations alone, that doesn't just solve one issue. It solves many issues because reparations can solve the issue of education. Reparations can solve the issue of being an economic underclass. It can solve the issue of us being able to create other things such as jobs, hospitals, schools, and all these other things. So in other words, reparations is not all these things such as like vouchers and shit like that. But if we as foundational black Americans have the money to do things, we're going to revamp society and we're going to solve a lot of the problems that we have. Therefore, it is not a one issue type of thing. Having the money and access to that will be able to help us create other things in society. And then the other thing, like I said, is that they tend to do this thing where they lean on this idea that they can't do anything specifically for black people because that would be divisive or it's just not fair or whatever the case may be. But they will do specific things for other groups of people, such as when they gave reparations to Guamanians, when they gave reparations to Japanese Americans, when they gave money to Ukraine, when they gave money when they do money for war. I mean, I could just keep going. They have very specific things. Like it even goes across like races and cultures. I mean, it goes into actual agendas. That's why I said like they even will allocate money for war. And then they'll go into all these other things, right? So I think my point here is that there are tangible things that we're asking for specifically for black society. But then there's always this point of deviating to how you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But it's never anything of substance. And that brings me to my next point. Democratic shields, because they don't have substance, tend to use deceit and manipulation in order to try to sway people to their side. Now, one could infer that the Republicans do this as well, too. But the Democrats have a different style about how they go about it. It's the typical thing where the Republicans a lot of times tell you exactly who they are. But the Democrats like to make it seem like they're for the people. And in this case, for the people would 100% be for foundational Black Americans, really above everybody, because our ancestors were the ones who built this country. But at the same time, what they do is slight us and do things that disrespect us, sometimes openly and sometimes covertly. That's why they think that they can sway us by bashing Black men or having a bunch of celebrities up in there trying to do these concerts and shit whenever they're having political campaigns. Or they try to do, you know, little things where they make the politician who is in office try to make it seem like they are relatable. Democratic shills like to spread propaganda that drives a wedge between blacks in Black society. They also like to bastardize different things that we ask for, which is why even when we talk about reparations and things like that, they tend to try to go back to things like HR 40, which are nothing burgers once again, and their studies, and to continue to talk about reassessing reparations and the claim over and over and over again. We really don't need any damn reassessment. We need people who are going to put checks in our hands. We have things that we have to do to improve Black society, and they will not give it to us. And like I said, Democratic shills understand all of this, and that's why they're manipulative and deceitful, because they're not going to tell you all of this. They also are not going to tell you that they're really handlers for the dominant society on the liberal side. So they are the mouthpieces for really white liberals and white Democrats who really want them to say and do all of these different things in order for them to get Black society's vote. So they like to go and use them as puppets to say, hey, these are Black faces saying the things that we are saying. So they essentially are willing puppets who know that there's something in it for them at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they are really inherently selfish individuals who are trying to pretend to be humanitarians, who are sanctimonious. Now I want to go into the different types of Black Democratic shills that exist. And I believe there to be 8 main categories that those who are Democratic shills typically fall into. And I want to briefly describe each of them and some of the behaviors and even motivations as to why a lot of these individuals have chosen to become a Democratic shill. And I also want to add that with these categories, just because I'm saying that this is a specific type, it doesn't mean that there's not overlap. In other words, some of these Democratic shills could fall into multiple categories. But overall, I would say the typical Democratic shill, the Democratic talking piece, the person who is pushy, the person who is trying to fearmonger you, falls into one of these 8 categories. The first type of Black Democratic shill that I would put on this list is the tether or the Black immigrant Sambo. And the main reason why this is a perfect example of someone who falls into this category is because there are a lot of Black immigrants who come over here to America and decide to be political shills, political Democratic shills. Now, I have seen them on the Republican side as well too, but I've definitely seen them strongly in the Democratic Party as well too. And the main motivation behind why these individuals tend to choose to Democratic shill it the hell up is because many of them don't have a camaraderie with foundational Black Americans. They're loyal most of the time to whatever benefits that they can get as immigrants. And they also know too that folks like Donald Trump are talking about building the wall and wall policies and all this other shit. So they're trying to find a way to make sure they make it over here to America. But the problem I have with them isn't even so much their apprehension to vote for somebody who doesn't want them over here in America, so much as the idea of the fact that they're being let over with benefits And then they come over to undermine foundational Black Americans. And we are considered xenophobic, othering, divisive, or whatever if we call these things out. But they can sit up in these political spaces and disrespect us. Because, for example, somebody like Barack Obama would be considered a tether or a Black immigrant Sambo. And the reason why is because he is not of our lineage, but he has had family who came over here from Kenya. He was born over here as an anchor baby. And now here he is browbeating foundational Black American men who are pro-Black, because that's really who he was talking to. They're not going to say it, but that's who he was really targeting. And my problem with that is the hypocrisy. If I were to go over to somewhere like Africa or even in the Caribbean, and as a foundational Black American speak to the people over there like they're a bag of shit, they probably would try to off me. And they know it. So why should we let them over here to disrespect us, talk badly about us, and then also try to cosplay our culture? That's not cool. But that's the first type of Democratic shield that you will see. The second type of Democratic shield that you will see is, and I would probably bundle this category into one, although it can kind of go two different ways, is the bitter Black woman / Black feminist type of trope. And the reason why I would create this as a category is because this individual often is so angry by other Black people, specifically Black men, that they have made being a Black woman a specific class. So in other words, it's almost as if being a Black woman is a specific racial group that is separate from Black society as a whole. So anything that pertains to women is going to be a red alert for them. They're more concerned about womanhood than they are about Blackness as a whole. As a matter of fact, they're only concerned about Blackness when it actually impacts Black women specifically. When Black men were getting dogged, a lot of these bitter Black women, and I would really call them shea butter sambas low key, because these are really shea butter sambas I'm talking about at this point. They were seeing this as acceptable, because the reality is that not all Black women felt that way. There were a lot of Black women who actually were quite disgusted by what Barack Obama did and also what the Democrats have been doing in general. But I'm talking about a very specific group. You have these Black women who were bitter, shea butter sambas. That's what we're going to call them, shea butter sambas, who are super, super, super bitter. And as a result, they have found every single way, took every single opportunity to revolt against Black men. So they are really in there for their own self-interest. So a lot of times they'll get into political spaces. They'll go on talk shows. They'll do all these different things, and they'll spout a lot of the same Democratic talking points because they want anything that's going to pertain to being a woman. They have literally chosen to prioritize womanhood over being Black overall. The third type of Democratic shield that you will see is a Black person who is LGBTQIA+. It's no secret that Barack Obama created tangibles for people who are LGBTQIA+. And so even with that, they know that there's that possibility that some other rights or things like that, some other tangibles could possibly be in their future. And a lot of times you'll see them acting very sassy and saying a lot of the same things that the bitter shea butter sambas that I talked about are doing as well too. They're almost take on their personality. You know, a lot of them will go on the internet and then they'll say stuff about Black men as if they're a Black woman themselves. And they also too will try to use themselves as an example of how it's that they almost are somewhat of a different type of Black man. They're somebody who has accepted what the Democrats are trying to do, and they understand it. They're not stupid. They have come to their senses, when in actuality, it's quite the opposite. A lot of them believe that, you know, just like the bitter shea butter samba, they can prioritize something outside of Blackness. So instead of it being a thing where the shea butter samba believes they're going to prioritize womanhood over Blackness, they're now prioritizing their sexuality over Blackness. So they would be the next group that I would say. Now, The fourth group that I would say, and this group kind of can go into other ones as well too, but it's still important to note, are pastors and preachers. A lot of times the pastors and the preachers, you know, they in their sermons will say these different things, and they'll let a lot of people like Joe Biden come into their church, and then it's a big old fish fry when it's over and all this other stuff. But you can see all the signs and everything like that there. And, you know, these people already have like a Sambo spirit. So that's already within them. And to be quite honest, there's always been something inherently selfish about a lot of the preachers who kind of get into this. They always talk about the racism of Trump, but they wouldn't dare, especially around like last year's election, talk about the racism that Joe Biden has done. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is a saint. Matter of fact, I think he's a blatant racist, my damn self. But the thing is that they're trying to make it seem like the Democrats are not so bad. I mean, I even literally had a sit down with a black pastor before who literally sat in my face and told me that black people need to get on board with the Democrats, because even with Joe Biden, he's not such a bad guy. And that's why he voted for him. And I'm like, oh my God, the churches are just damn doomed. Because you got Negroes like this up in here babbling about how Joe Biden is actually a good guy. And this is the same dude that had a whole bunch of black people locked up and still does racist shit here in the 2020s. Now, the fifth type of Democratic shield that you will see is the old nigga, as Jason Black has said many times. The old nigga really doesn't care about anything else but themselves and making sure that they got their prescription at Walgreens. That's really all they give a fuck about. These Negroes don't care about justice. They don't care about empowerment. They just want you to sit down, shut up, vote for the Democrats, and then not change up too many things, because they know if things shift one way or another, that it's going to fuck up whatever medication they need to take to continue to stay on this planet. But the reality is that with these old niggas, they have no desire to actually try to help in creating empowerment. They only have desire to be able to live as long as they possibly can. Now, the problem with them ultimately is that they tend to run counter to black empowerment. And that's why a lot of them, and I feel like this is actually one of the worst type of Democratic shields, they actually are the ones who will preach to you about how you have to vote for the Democrats because your ancestors died for your right to vote and all this other stuff, when they conveniently forget that our ancestors actually died for our right to try to get tangibles for ourselves, and voting was used as a vehicle to possibly do this. So a lot of these old niggas don't really have the spirit to try to fight back against empowerment, when they don't even have to go on the streets and march and all this other stuff. They could get in political positions and try to create things for their progeny and for future generations. But instead, these Negroes are out here cooning for butter biscuits. So that's the next type of Democratic shield that you will see, and somebody who has no honor. The next type of black Democratic shield that you will see is and I'm gonna kind of throw all these in the same category: the college student, post-college student, and maybe Divine Nine person. So I've said this before on Instagram quite a bit, but these damn black college students are some of the most useless people ever. For individuals who have spent 4 to 8 years being educated, they are some of the dumbest Negroes. These Negroes act this way though, and I feel a little empathy for them at the same time. While I think that they're dumb as hell, I do feel some empathy for them to a certain extent. A lot of them are just brainwashed young individuals who are just following the orders, commands, and directives that were given to them by the old Negroes. That's why I put more of the onus on old Negroes as to why they think this way. A lot of the college students who come out the reason why they think like this is because being in college already puts them in somewhat of an incubator where they're going to think and act a certain way. College teaches you to be obedient. And with black people, it essentially teaches them to capitulate to a certain system. And a lot of times for blacks, it creates liberal ideals within black society. That's why a lot of the black women become feminists, and they believe that they are even better than black men in society because they believe that academia is the thing that's going to help them to know everything. And a lot of the black men are desiring to be bullies, individuals who, if they make enough money, that ultimately will result in them feeling like they maybe crack some damn cheek. And to be quite honest, a lot of these black Democratic Shill college students who fall under this trope, they already kind of had a selfish thing about them, because think about it, being in college is already a very selfish time in your life, but they carry that selfishness on even beyond the college scene. And I specifically want to point to black students in HBCUs and then blacks who are in the Divine Nine. Not all people in the Divine Nine, so no shade, because I know a whole lot of black people in the Divine Nine who are some of my friends, and they are all great brothers and also great sisters as well too. So I'm not talking about any of y'all. So you all see this is not talking about you. Trust me, I've had conversations with you and I vetted you. Anyway, the point is that a lot of them already think that they're better than a lot of other black people in black society. They think that they've reached an epitome of blackness itself. So they know what we need to do in order to create justice for ourselves. And what they don't understand is that they've only reached a glass ceiling in trying to create black empowerment. As a matter of fact, the only thing they really actually care about is having a pro-black aesthetic, but not necessarily any substance. So many of them become Democratic shills because they believe that that's part of them doing their part in something that is going to help black society, even if it is something like a lift all, because they have been indoctrinated so much by college and the things that are being taught, and including, you know, what's not being taught, such as our actual history, that they now are choosing not to embrace anything but a mentality that says that they're going to vote for Democrats. So in other words, they do not want to rock the boat and do things because they believe that all they need to do is make a bunch of money and be a success for themselves, and it doesn't matter what happens with the rest of black society. Because really it's all about them. And college, to a certain extent, puts them in that mindset that it's everyone for themselves. The next type of Democratic shield that I see quite often is the radio host or TV show host. They often are Democratic shields because you'll have black people who will try to present, again, this black aesthetic or this image of black people talking about things that are related to the culture. And oftentimes those things are interesting and sometimes sensational, but they are not things necessarily that talk about pro-blackness or real black empowerment. And their way of trying to create some form of black empowerment is by talking about Democratic shield stuff, talking about Democratic shield talking points and going into that. And their motivation as to why they do it is because they are being paid. They are paid handlers. A lot of times they have these individuals whose campaigns they are endorsing who are part of the Democratic Party, and they are using that platform that they know a lot of people who are black are listening to and watching to promote certain propaganda about this political party. The Democrats get to them because they believe that they are voices for what's going on in the world for black people and what's going on when it comes to black news. So ultimately they are used as pawns to put the message out. They create platforms for those types of spaces because none of them will actually stand up to the falsehood that is Democratic shilling. A lot of them capitulate to it and expect us to do the same because they have been designated as black leaders by the Democrats. And as a result, those of us who are naive will listen to them and try to take in the things that they are saying. And you see this quite a bit too. You see this with things like the Breakfast Club, because even with the Breakfast Club, like they used to have a lot of really good interviews, and now it's like, especially recently, it's been a lot of Democratic shilling, and every now and again they'll try to throw in somebody who has a different opinion than a lot of them who are on there. And you know, a lot of times it's one of those things where they do that because they're trying to make it seem like it's fair and unbiased. But you all saw the way that Charlemagne was sitting there kind of bitching up when he was talking to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden was talking about if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, and here he is shilling for Kamala. So that's what I mean by, you know, I think that they try to present certain images while doing the exact opposite. In the case of The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne, you have this thing where he always tries to make himself seem like he's somebody who is no nonsense, doesn't discriminate, keeps it real, speaks his mind. But then he turns around and he actually is someone who doesn't speak his mind when it's needed, especially when Joe Biden sat right in his face and told him he wasn't black if he did A, B, C, or D. So I say that to say that a lot of them are Democratic handlers, and they're trying to be a little bit easy and softball-ish with, you know, that with the Democratic Party. Now, they're not the only source that I'm talking about. There's other talk shows that have done scurvy things. And a lot of times they'll use their platforms to spew Democratic shill talking points or to do things that Democratic shills do. The last group that I want to talk about are the celebrity class. Now, there are a few different types of celebrities that tend to show up in these Democratic shill spaces, and I really want to break this down. So you have these celebrities that have this kind of faux pro-black facade that tend to become Democratic shills. Like, for example, you have like the Spike Lees and the people like that who kind of surprise you because, you know, they've always been about trying to talk about black culture in a lot of the things that they do and that they speak about, and then they turn around and then they are kicking it with the DNC. Then you also have the celebrities that become Democratic shills because they're washed up or they're broke or something like that. Good examples of this are like Taraji P. Henson, because, you know, remember she was crying about how she was treated unfairly because she's a black woman and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying that that's not true. I do believe that she was treated unfairly. But regardless, it goes back to the point that I made about how sometimes you get these people who get into shea butter Sambism, and, you know, they are willing to take certain opportunities and do certain things if it fills their pockets because of the fact that they need money at the end of the day. So that means that they'll even sacrifice integrity, because to them, the only person who they feel that they need to be accountable for is themselves. They don't care about the accountability of the black community as a whole. They don't care about doing things specifically for black society. They care about what can they do to fill their pockets, even if that means spreading propaganda that's not helpful to their own culture. Another good example, this is D.L. Hughley. There was a Vlad TV interview where he talked about how he was broke, and this was like around that time during COVID. I don't know if it was that he was broke during COVID or before, but around COVID he was doing interviews with Vlad TV, and he was talking about how, you know, he was broke and all this other stuff. Then all of a sudden he turns around and he's Democratic shilling to hell. I mean, this dude has been doing this shit for years. At first he was pushing the vijayab, you know, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to say that, but I'm not going to say like what it actually is, but you get what I mean when I say that. And then you have, you know, him now Democratic shilling it up every time that he turns up. Or another good example is Plies, another, you know, artist who he has music that I like, so don't get me wrong, but he's once again very washed up. Nobody's talking about him. He's not relevant, but he's always trying to back up some Democratic stuff that's being said. So you always get these celebrities and these entertainers and people like that who have no integrity. And to be honest with you, nobody in the black community is paying attention to their dumb asses anymore. So what they do in order for them to get a bag, because that's their last resort, is they sacrifice integrity and say, whoop, I'm going to help the Democrats. Fuck it. So a lot of them get into all of that. But yeah, those are the 8 types to watch out for. My final message here, y'all, is, again, be smart in your decisions when you are voting or not voting. But ultimately, you need to understand the psychology of these individuals, because they do not have good intentions. They have intentions to lead you to think just like them, because ultimately, most of them aren't telling you the reason why they're doing it. And that reason is because they are selfish. It's as simple as that. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and I'll definitely have more to come, so stay tuned. Other than that, I hope y'all have a great rest of y'all's night. Peace.